You kind of eliminated the middleman.
I just forgot to ask you guys about it before I had to leave.
Yeah, we were all together about a week ago for the Kim's video reopening in the Alamo bunker.
Which was fine, but I forgot. Anyway, we're here now, so
Which I suggest you guys check out. It's cool. It happened.
Yeah.
Like we all actually worked at Kim's video. He was at Avenue A, so it's like not quite the same thing as the rest of us. But yeah.
The most like second class citizen video.
But anyway, yeah, it's open
It's
again. It's
actually
free
the
rentals.
original Kim's.
Free rentals, but late fees, as far as I understand.
yeah,
So-
that's what I think too. It's
And
neat.
yeah,
I don't know why we're talking about this, but
that's how you and I met. So
yes. And I left without asking these guys if they could come, and I'm grateful that they did. I'm grateful that everyone came. We were just outside saying we don't know what to
Thanks for
talk
being
about. I don't remember much about this.
Now, Alex, I haven't seen this film since it came out.
Me neither. So.
So only pose questions to you that are related to my like few memories of it.
Great.
Your lead actress wears a shirt that says "Who's farted?"
Yes.
How's that going?
I think that was just one of her contributions was saying I wanted we didn't belabor very many decisions on this movie, I would say. So if somebody said I want to wear this, the answer was probably just go for it. I think she thought, I mean, she wore that, you know, it's not like we made the shirt. I think that was just her shirt in real life, and I think she thought it gave her like a little comedic advantage to have it. And then it became like a prominent still made use of it, so it kind of became much more iconic than it should have been.
and where is she now?
Well, I mean, does anyone here know her, or can I give an honest answer? No. Wow. So the actress in this movie, for a couple of years, not that anyone asked this except for Sean, I kept hearing these stories that she was like going so far to the left that she became on the right. And then
Horseshoe theory.
exactly, and had one of the, was somebody who's, as I was told by a mutual friend, or the girl Kate, who plays the professor's new girlfriend, the blonde girl. CARLEN had like been so broken by the Bernie loss of 2016 that she became a Trump supporter over time, and then was
As did we all.
a common story. And according to our mutual friend Kate, had sort of given up traditional living for unhomed living with with someone who was like a conservative squatter, and became enmeshed in this community in Los Angeles of people who just like lived outside as a way of sticking it to the system, and then somehow became involved with like vaccine conspiracy theorists. And as last I know, was photographed holding a protest sign at a vaccines are being used to implant tracking devices into your brains rally. As I think everyone was obviously expecting me to say. 10 years on, this is the answer. But I think, unless I'm mistaken, like never appeared in another movie. Certainly not in like any creative capacity. Maybe like popped up in a Friends movie for a scene, which kind of leads this like bizarre mystique to this one feature appearance.
But you're like Renee Falconetti and
exactly.
Passion of Joan of Arc.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. It's very weird. Yeah, this one friend of ours keeps me abreast of like any weird little rumors she hears, but it's pretty bleak, pretty wild, not unexpected.
This is like a true hero. While we're doing this, the most worthless shit of all time is just really like just representing the human race in a like
She
real
is
cool
or we
way.
She is. Okay, I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, Sean, you did the cinematographies on this movie. How do you do them? Do you use like lenses and things?
I do feel like if there's a way for you to talk about this, I want you to talk about your relationship with that camera from Maisels.
Right, yeah,
Which
that's
was
the
this-
Maisels camera, right.
Yeah,
so
so-
yeah, I borrowed it from Al Maisels and never gave it back. And we made a bunch of movies with that camera, but it didn't have a video tap, so it meant the director couldn't see what I was shooting, which was liberating, of course. I really, I did a lot of good work that way. But also we shot it. It's 4:3. And then we were like, yeah, we're gonna punch in on it and make it 16 by 9 or whatever, and which made it even like grainier than, and we were probably pushing it. I don't know. It's a really grainy movie. Yeah, I don't know. I wanted to do black and white because I just come back from Japan shooting another movie, and I really was like in love with the black and white stuff. I didn't care about anything color, so I was like, we have to shoot this black and white. And that was like it was a bit of a discussion, but luckily there's like, you know, Woody Allen comedies that are black and white, and there are comedies that are black and white for maybe 6 or 7 decades. Comedies that were black and white, so it wasn't that like unheard of, but it is called The Color Wheel. So that was like it's made the title have a different kind of thing.
Yeah, it made it a little ironic, but the black and white, for some reason, right before we made this, Film Forum did a Bill Forsyth series, and we were watching Housekeeping and Local Hero, and you love Chris Menges, and we were just like, a comedy can be elegiac in its appearance, and can have like sort of needlessly thoughtful cinematography with dialogue that's not necessarily in unison with the aesthetic, and that was kind of exciting. Mm-hmm. But I cannot emphasize, this is like the movie.
Those are really well photographed.
Yeah, no, they're better photographed than this, but I'm just referencing those as a film series we attended about 6 weeks before making this movie, and therefore was fresh in our minds. But I think about this movie a lot, like, you know, this was the movie that was made at the time that it was hardest to shoot on film. Of everything we did, it was almost impossible, and we didn't see a frame of this footage developed or processed for over a month after we wrapped.
Also, after the previous movie we had made, we had no reason to think that anybody would ever see this.
Yeah, it was made
that was the main thing.
Very close together.
Yeah.
So for some reason, there was this emboldened sense of confidence to make another movie, which is something else I don't remember why a decade later, but it was so hard to shoot on.
That film. Was you.
Well, yeah, it wasn't me.
Yeah, you just really had this kind of energy. You know,
yeah.
I don't know what happened to it.
No, me neither.
It was automatic that we were making something every fall or whatever, or
summer
and fall.
This and the first one.
Because he would get upset if he wasn't shooting for this season.
I know. Yeah, it was fun to shoot in like June, but it was really technically challenging to just get this film on black and white, shot and processed and shipped and developed, and then it looked really nice. Kind of like at the time, it looked like nothing else that would have been at a film festival alongside it, which I think it distinguished it in its own weird way.
And then a year later, Francis Ha was shot in color and then turned into black and white, and then they were interviewed extensively about the incredible look of it.
Famously, A.O. Scott in the New York Times filed an initially unfavorable report about this motion picture, and then walked it back in his official review. What do you account this to? A beta male's just sort of cringing insecurity?
I don't know what you're talking. I don't remember what you're talking about.
He did a BAM Cinema Fest rap.
Oh, okay, yeah, like a sort of, because this was in.
Wait a minute. People don't care about film criticism at all.
Well, so correct me if I'm wrong. So it was in the BAM Cinema Fest where there's like 10 other movies, and it was mentioned unfavorably.
Yeah, and
then a year later when the movie came out,
I think you're being coy.
I'm trying to. Come on, it's been 10 years. I don't necessarily remember it. And then a year later, his feelings.
It's like filed like a glowing review.
Well, I guess it's like a Gallo Roger Ebert thing where I saw the movie again and realized I don't know.
So if this is your first time seeing it, I see it again as soon as you can.
Do we know what he said the first time?
We're not aware.
Okay. I don't know. I think
walk it back.
Yeah. I want to look into this.
Please treat yourself.
I will. The only thing like that I remember, two things, is that so like the movie came out like in theaters, like, you know, to buy a ticket, not at a film festival, like a year ago next week, 10 years ago next week.
Where?
At BAM on 35, probably the same print, and then sort of did like this road show around the country. We only had 2 prints, so it played in every like Cinematech college campus, one week, you know, places, any alternative venue. And there was an article that Dennis Lim wrote in the New York Times when they used to, in the weekend art section, cover like a really small movie. And in it, I like kind of aired my grievances about the movie not playing at South by Southwest, and I said that I got a nasty rejection And I immediately got this email from the programmers being like, "How dare you say that in the New York Times?" And I remember that. As the speaking, and there was an article in the Village Voice, which you famously
I pinned that. Yeah.
wrote to, and the title of the article was like Alex Ross Perry's Wheelhouse, as like a sort of play on words.
I never wrote the title.
And then Carlin, when we were talking about it, I was like, "Did you see the Village Voice thing?" And she goes, "Yeah, but they got the name of the movie wrong." And I was like,
Never wrote the title. That was my editress at the time, Allison Benedict. Currently, I think it's Slade.
and I was like, "Got the title of the movie wrong. What are you talking about?" She's like, "They called it the Wheelhouse." And I said, No, that's like a term relating to like someone's area of expertise or interest." And she just looked at me and she was like, "Oh, I didn't know that." And then she just like walked away. And I was like, wonder what it would be like to like just if the word wheelhouse trips you up, where is the line for like how many conversations you have in a day that contain things that just like you don't understand what people
Maybe
are
she
talking
just didn't think you had a wheelhouse.
I'm now becoming like chilled to the bone that we're gonna become part of the like Roxy opener, where like Rick and Lloyd is like chatting.
Yeah. Are we supposed to do questions?
Well, we can.
Oh yeah,
Nick
people
doesn't
in the
have one
audience
anymore.
have questions? Maybe.
It was odd. I mean, in terms of like the A.O. Scott thing you're mentioning, like we were sort of been befuddled by the response to this because we were sort of.
Yeah, it's not that good.
I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, I when I finished this movie, I wasn't like, we did it. This is like all of our intentions are clear in the final version. It was like I can't believe this thing made it to the finish line. And then as it sort of like snowballed from this year of festivals into like 6 months of being released, so it was like 2 years of this movie. It kept being like, because it was always kind of an outsider underdog object, it always was a little bit more acceptable to say was good than something that's being shoved down your throat. Like
Well,
in
this
film
is
festival
the
podcasts.
period in which people were like deep throating like Bajowski movies and
Like
the guy with that hero lip who made Red Flag and who's in Girls. What's his fucking name?
Boston.
Yeah, the guy I think he plays the Joker in the deleted scene of the new Batman.
What's this fucker's name?
Alex Karpovsky.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
As Rodney says in Robin Rodney, there's another one. About that guy. Yeah, this was a period where that was praisable. You could praise things like that and things like this. So maybe the fact that it was kind of shaggy and a little bit nasty and a little bit unapologetic distinguish it from things that were a little more mealy-mouthed.
And your previous film played at a festival that closed, that stopped after, right? Like,
Well, not
Cinema,
because. Yeah,
again, that's why I thought like the one festival that played the other movie is gone, so
It was
nothing's
gone,
gonna
yeah.
play this. So
so we really felt like we had no hope.
right, or yeah, we should have been liberated by that, but instead I just felt lazy. I guess a little bit when we made this.
I felt-
thinking that, assuming that it would just disappear.
We certainly did, yeah.
But we put all our friends in it.
And I mean, like, I cannot say this enough. The fact that there's this many, like, 10 years later, we're still here, like, it's crazy to me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought we would be talking about this movie 10 months after we finished. And it almost looked like we weren't going to. I mean, it had like this weird kind of slow start to its life. But slow and steady wins the race. And here we are. Questionless.
There's somebody.
Okay.
Oh.
There's a lot of only children involved with this movie. You're an only child.
Yeah, but
I am not, but I sort of have become one via family situations that have been in play for a long time. So for all
so
intents
happy
and
you asked
purposes,
that.
but yeah, we talked about. I mean, because the crew was like 5 people. You, only child. Kate Shield, only child. Anna, who's in the movie and is now my wife, only child. And you all have like a very particular disposition about you.
Yeah, but you're not an only child. That's
No, but I
important.
act like one. Because I was one for so long and then kind of am one again.
What happened to the sibling?
Yeah.
I mean, that has nothing to do with
What
the
did
movie.
you do?
I didn't do anything. I was just like 8 or 9 when my sibling was born. So I didn't have, and then I was out to college when she was like 7. So we don't talk. And then she like didn't talk to my parents for a while either. It's fine. It's nothing to do with the movie.
Oh, cool. Other questions?
I mean, it has something.
In the back.
It came to be, I mean, she was in this movie that the Rye Rousseau Young, who's in the first and last scenes of this movie, made called You Won't Miss Me, which is a movie that I really liked. And Carlin was in that movie playing opposite Stella Schnabel in a really good couple of scenes, and I thought she was really good in the movie. And then somebody said that we looked like we could be related. And I was kicking around an idea for something like this, and I was like, maybe that's the performer that makes this movie make sense. And then we sort of like, I came to her with an outlined movie. And then I was like, do you want to flesh out this character? And then she did that, and then I like wrote the script from page 1 to the end, and then she like nitpicked and revised every word that she would say. Because at the time, again, like with these movies that you're sort of referencing both positively and negatively.
Oh, I love this movie. The, like, it's like, I'm sorry I'm not fake. Scene is such a fucking.
Hey, man. I don't even remember what you're talking about, but I believe you. I mean,
it's the Stoic novel, like giving a dressing down to Carlen's character.
Okay, yeah. Right. Maybe it is.
We all like that movie quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of real in its own way, and it was very exciting to see. And but like over time, like it just became very stressful as like a collab. It's like in our sort of writing sessions, such as they were, it was just kind of riffing and me making notes. But at the time, as I was trying to say, like a lot of these movies that were kind of director-actor collaborative, like just at the time, the credits were just so shared like that because the movies felt so collaborative in a way that like it almost would make as much sense to say directed by Alex and Sean as it would say to say written by Alex and Carlen. Just because that was like the sort of everyone is kind of doing this together spirit. Having like written a lot of movies since then, I know now that she didn't co-write this movie. But like that just wasn't apparent at the time, nor was that necessarily the correct way to evaluate what collaboration meant when movies were being made by like 5 or 6 people instead of like 20 or 30 or 40 or 50. So yeah, it's a weird thing because she couldn't write a movie now. Like she couldn't do it if her life depended on it. And like I know that we didn't write it together. I know that I wrote it. And then she like rewrote her character's dialogue in a voice I never would have found. Like I couldn't have written those words. And her performance is better because she found her own voice as a performance. But I just remember at one point, like I didn't hear from her for 3 months. And then she just texted me like, how's it going? Are you writing the movie? And I was like, it's finished. Like, what do you want? What do you mean? I've been trying to get you a script for like weeks and I don't know where you are. But yeah, I mean, the sort of like sessions where we would sit and just kind of go over scenes and riff were really fun. Like they were weird and loose, and I enjoyed them. But yeah, it was an odd collaborative process. But I imagine if you asked a lot of people making movies at this time, a lot of these answers would be shared credits, co-writing, co-directing. A lot of these things were very, very nebulous back when no one knew what they were doing.
Other questions from the room about the motion picture The Color Wheel, 1987 film The Color Wheel.
I do remember I was really not very supportive of you being in it.
Very unsupportive.
Yeah,
Extremely
it's,
unsupportive.
while you wouldn't be able to monitor what I was shooting as a director, I still like felt like I needed to have you next to me, not in front of me. But as we were shooting and there were kind of conflicts with some of the dialogue and stuff like that, I was like much more and more on your side of the things, and so I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It sort of disappeared, that sort of worry that I had of like me having to be basically like kind of saying like, oh yeah, that was a good take or not. That was what I was afraid of, because that doesn't feel like, I don't feel like I should have that responsibility.
No, certainly not. Like, yeah, it was odd because like trying to think back on it, like as you're saying, we don't have a monitor on this movie or the first movie that we made, which kind of taught me to like I didn't care, I didn't second guess, and even still when we would be making something now, I wouldn't necessarily say I need to be at the monitor. Sometimes it's fun to just kind of be over your shoulder, and that was like a technique that just emerged by default on these movies, especially this where I was hopping in front of the camera as well. But it was just trust of the image being correct, but for that reason and many others, I mean, made 4 movies since this. Like, this was the hardest movie I've ever made, and by far the most difficult, even though it was not the longest shoot and not the most.
How many days was it?
It's like 18. Yeah, it was like
Really?
Yeah, it was 3 weeks. For some reason, I just know for years the number is 18.
Easy days, I guess.
For you, maybe. It was like 18 days. So we did a couple days here, then we went to Boston and did a lot of exteriors. Then we went to Vermont for like a week and a half and did everything else. And then we went to Philadelphia for a day. But yeah, it was like 18 off and on.
One of the things I enjoy so much about the movie is it's this like sort of something wild thing where it's like a road trip movie. Where it's like a sort of crummy road trip.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna go from New York to central Pennsylvania.
He made very clear it was not
It's
going to
like
be
a
a road
6-hour
movie.
road trip.
He made very clear it was not going to be a road movie, so we shot like 5 minutes of the car driving, and every single frame of that I think is.
Oh
in
yeah,
there.
some of those frames are in there twice.
Yeah. That made me crazy.
And the best shots, by the way, like the out of the windshield sort of shots, and like going into a sort of foggy dip. These are the best shots in the movie.
Yeah, I wish we had the foresight to get like 10
A
more
little
minutes of
more,
those.
yeah.
Yeah, well, that was always a narrative somersault. Is like, not that any of this is spoken, but like you just need to know these things to write it and to plan it out. Like, so they live somewhere outside of Philadelphia, and the trip goes to Boston, which is a 1-day drive. But then there had to be this justification for not immediately turning around and going home. And then it was this sort of thing of like going to other places and then getting waylaid and then saying it's very late. But yeah, not to be like a cross-country trip, but like a short, crummy trip.
Yeah. It's a subgenre of road trip movie.
Yeah.
So, like it should take a day. How do we fuck this up?
Yeah. Well, that's part of the thing of writing it was like always trying to put the characters in a position where they couldn't succeed. And that was like the justification, it's just like, it's a movie of sequences of like, there's this sequence where they're here with the professor, and then there's this sequence where they're like going to this party, and like, it was always like just putting them in a place where they couldn't easily extricate themselves from the situation, and therefore were always kind of stuck, or things took longer than they were supposed to, and things just, break down, or like you can't, lock down, like all these little things just to create narrative excuses to draw the story out to a robust 80 minutes. Sweet.
Yeah, were any scenes cut out? And
Yeah, there was a couple things.
We have a question from the audience.
Yeah, well, that was the only reference we talked about. So I'm glad that on your own, you just look at it and you're like, you know what this reminds me of? This shambolic, cheap movie is one of the most beautiful pieces of American art that's ever been made. Yeah, I mean, that was very important. I had seen an exhibit at the Complete Americans a year or so earlier, and as we sat down to discuss the black and white question, I had my book that I bought at the museum, and I was just obsessed with it, and I felt that, to your point of like these movies that people were very quick to praise at the time, and you were very angry about these as well, like they were just so light on images. Like you would say, you look at these movies and like, these don't contain images. These don't contain thoughtful frames or photography that is even remotely meaningful, even for no money. And we were very aligned with that. And it was very clear that movies like that were people were finding things to praise about them anyway.
I actually like to bring up Robert Frank, like it's another crummy road trip movie, like Candy Mountain.
I love Candy
It's like
Mountain, we talked
fucking
about,
New York to Halifax.
Yeah, no, that's I had Sean's tape of that for like 6 years.
Yeah.
Robert Frank's Candy Mountain is a great
where
film.
you lose it because it was valuable
Yeah.
and out of print.
Well, then I found my own, and I gave it yours back. But yeah, Candy Mountain is a very good movie. Kind of thing that could maybe play well here now that I think about it.
Yeah, I mean, Robert Frank is, I mean, I'm still seeing the stuff again and again. It's just like always refreshing, and I think he's such a superhero, and I wish that he was more commonly ripped off, maybe even, or something. I don't know, just so that he's remembered, or more played more often, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, so like for
His
us,
films.
Yeah,
just the
it's
photo.
very odd movies that for a while, right around this time, played Anthology. There was a little series of his directorial efforts. But yeah, it couldn't have been more important. Just the idea of bringing black and white film into a diner on the side of the road in Vermont or a motel that costs $50 a night. I thought, we can't do anything to these locations when we get there, but if they're in black and white, that'll be something. And you know, we looked at the footage a month later and we were like, yeah, it's kind of something. It looks nice.
The guy that when you guys check into the hotel,
Yeah.
He was from like a community theater nearby.
That's right, yeah. All of the people in the movie that don't seem evidently like our friends were from a Vermont community theater. I made contact with during one of my trips up there to kind of secure permission. And yeah, they just all agreed to come and do this. And like, to this day, I just wonder if anyone ever says to them, you know, I just came across this movie and you're in it. Because I never hear from any of them after. But it has this life that goes beyond. Yeah, I don't know, but that guy is very peculiar and very interesting to me.
Yeah, the Boston party scene where the people seem like a version of Whitstleman's Metropolitan a little bit. Is that from like personal experience, or is that kind of like your take on
the
the?
reference for that scene. I've never even seen that movie.
But you have a good reason for never having seen it.
Well, the video box was so terrible looking.
Wonderful quips.
The box was so bad looking. I
Who's
just
the
never
lady
watched it.
taking off her fucking brassiere?
But it's like a weird. Yeah, it just and that scene is like the,
Easy, guys. Easy.
That's what it started with.
Yeah, that was the first 2 days of the movie, and I can't think of a worse logistic decision that I've ever made than structuring that much material with that many moving parts that early in the shoot with like no sense of how to be in front of the camera. And we were like here's a bad decision a 25-year-old makes when they're making a movie. This is a party scene and it takes place at night, so we should shoot these both overnights. And then we got there at like 9 p.m. and we were like, this place only has one window. Like now we have to be up until 6 in the morning, 2 days in a row. And it just was immediately excruciating. And yeah, it really felt like it. Perhaps it added to the kind of energy. But yeah, the whole idea was just, could there be a sequence that felt like it stopped the movie dead in its tracks, but in an organic way that felt like that's what was happening to the characters? And I think we succeeded in that. You were very critical of that to this day, and there's shots in that scene that like are not even charitably in focus. And then the sort of abstract quality of it kind of made it. It was like something that was supposed to be one thing, couldn't succeed at being that because of logistic difficulties, and then its clumsiness became its greatest strength, and then the scene kind of works despite what we didn't do as exactly what we should have done, which is make it like very blocky and awkward so that you feel awkward. And then we failed at that, and then somehow we succeeded at it without knowing when that happened.
So that's what the Whitstleman movie is like.
Sure. I mean,
I honestly can't imagine what your problem is with the VHS box. It's a very sexy, like strip poker situation. What would you not want to watch here?
It's a long time ago.
Let's just
Yeah,
bring
that
this
seems
thing
tough.
to
That
a
seems
freezing halt.
Okay. Any more questions?
there is. We can break this fight up about the Metropolitan VHS box. Yeah. Sort of. I mean, part of it was like a couple of things. One, I was like, much like Nick was saying, like so not interested in the gentle quality of a lot of contemporary micro budget movies, and I'm working backwards from the idea of doing something that was like throwing a grenade into a movie that looked and felt not dissimilar from other things was very appealing to me. And then a film that just played here a lot, The Brown Bunny, was a huge influence. And I wanted to try to figure out a way to replicate the feeling I had of seeing The Brown Bunny opening night at the big room at Sunshine, where there's like a sequence in the movie that you can hear a pin drop during. And I was like, what is a version of that I genuinely haven't seen in a movie? How can you find that in an organic way? And then like somewhere around this time, I just like went into this weird little self-curated rabbit hole of movies like The Hotel New Hampshire and what's the other, Flowers in the Attic and things like that were like this kind of subgenre for a while of these like naughty 70s, 80s movies, and that dealt with those themes, and I was like, well, that's something. That's like an interesting. And then like the more I was addressing the themes that were already trying to find a movie to live in, of just like how hard it is to grow apart from people and to grow to basically hate someone that you have no reason to hate, and to try to build a movie that led to like the most bizarre sense of reconciliation. It became like a monstrous version of those themes, and that was very exciting to me, both as like a sort of act of low stakes micro budget transgression, but also like just because it really felt like if I can pull that off and there's any honesty to the previous 75 minutes and that actually somehow works, I want to see if I can do that, because that if that is possible and if I can pull that off, I think that would be really, really outrageous as like an act of writing and filmmaking. And this is like a 25-year-old saying this, who has no reason to be confident about this at all, and has made like one movie that played like 10 times. And for some reason, I was like, I think I can pull all that off, and I think I can also be in front of the camera every day. So yeah, it was a lot. Well, there's a lot of great incest movies that sort of like don't get talked about. For
Luna.
La Luna is one of my favorites. Yeah, the Bertolucci, Jill Clayburgh movie.
As good as it gets.
I don't think there's incest in that. Is there? With Jack Nicholson and Helen Hunt?
Well, no, La Luna.
Yeah, sorry, I got 2 steps ahead of the joke on that. There's plenty of incest in La Luna. Then you said it's as good as it gets, and I said,
Oh, I see. Interestingly.
yeah, not
I saw that film on opening day.
as good as it gets.
Yeah, and it was New Year's Eve. I spun my car out on a snowy road in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I knocked over like a planter in like some old woman's front yard.
To make it to the theater on time.
No, coming back.
Oh, you were just you were just
I was all jazzed up.
Yeah.
Spun out, knocked over this planter, foolishly. Came in and was like, I'm really sorry. I knocked over this like little like brick weird thing that's in your front yard. And it's like, my late husband like put that there. To go back and lay all these bricks one by one.
You're something of an irascible Jim Brooks character yourself in that movie. You're sort of trying to make apologies for your bizarre behavior in the way that his characters do.
Listen, I'm unpacking some stuff.
Yeah, we've gotten sidetracked, but we love La Luna, a great film that I would recommend checking out. And what's the Louis Malle movie? Murmur of the Heart.
Murmur of the Heart.
Another great movie. Like I feel like these movies tend to be.
Coup de souffle.
I don't know that one.
Sean doesn't believe I can speak French.
Yeah.
But
More and more.
yeah, it's an interesting subgenre. And then I addressed this list of my Cement Garden's another neat one with Charlotte Gainsbourg. It's kind of an icky movie in a way that, again, is very strange and ungraspable. And at some point in a Q&A, when the movie was released, I listed these, and then somebody like ran a little coverage of the Q&A and said that I like listed my favorite incest movies, and then like it got Google alert picked up on some like sex protection website of like be aware that there's like people doing Q&As talking about these things as though they're like illegal films instead of highly acclaimed European art films. But yeah, it's a weird. I mean, has there been even like a movie, an incest movie since this?
You know, Alex, I consider you a friend. If you ever come around my daughter, God's fucking.
She's really close. She's close to your age. Weirdly, I do. Yeah. She's like the size of an egg.
All right.
Incest.
Yeah.
Friend's daughter. Anyway. There'll be a sequel.
You guys really stopped the room.
It's sequel.
Stopped the room dead.
I feel like this has been happening for like 2 hours.
No,
Does anybody have any questions
I'll
about the
answer
color wheel?
other things. Hopefully,
Queen of Earth coming up next.
we're going to introduce Queen of Earth, which is the
We are.
fourth.
Doing that?
I'm going to introduce it. You can do whatever you want. But we can address it. I mean, I think we're being very honest here. And I'll say also, if it incentivizes anyone to speak up, I have 8 of my original color wheel pins in my pocket if someone wants one of those. I think you used to have one on this very jacket.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
for years.
It must have fallen off.
I could give you one. I could give you another one. We could reduce my giveaways to 7. All right, well, I've got one for Sean and 7 others if anybody wants. If I throw them, they'll end up on the floor.
Some fucking Gallagher act. Flinging stuff out to the crowd. Yeah, Queen of Earth coming up next.
Yeah, we don't have to answer more questions, but I would love to.
Is there another question now? Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, can you talk about your own post-graduation college angst that ran parallel to this film?
I mean, I didn't have much. So as we were saying, I worked at Kim's Video with Sean. I was working there before I graduated from college. And then I graduated, and I worked at Kim's for another 1.5 years. And then I left, basically to make my first movie. And also because the location I was working in was closing. So like my post-college experience was basically the same as my late college experience, which was working in a video store with people like these guys. And then just kind of seeing 7 or 8 movies a week. And then at the age of 23, leaving that retail job to make one. And then making this.
Yeah, I think most of that time you were in movie theaters. We were too. That's where we really, because when he worked at the video store, I thought he was a really irritating guy. And we were not friends at all. And he was a pest. But then we were at the movies together all the time. And then we saw Out One on a weekend, the 15-hour version, whatever, in trains. And then we were buddies.
Yeah, the Jacques Rivette
Michael
retrospective
Landekijk was there, right?
at the Museum of the Moving Image in December of 2006.
With a little box lunch in the middle.
Who could
And
forget?
he made T-shirts.
I made Out One T-shirts for some friends.
And it's not that good, which is also fun.
The shirt? No, it's a very bad shirt.
But the
Shirts
Oh, the
great,
movie.
the movie's cool.
Yeah.
And the friendship is endured.
Yeah, it was weird, But yeah, that was kind of my post-college experience, which is
It was in the movies all the time.
great. I have the same job I've had since I was a junior in college, working at this store. And now that I don't go to school anymore, I can see more movies. And I did. Yeah, it was wild times to be in New York. You could go see 13-hour movies in the theater on 35mm with a box lunch.
You want to talk Odo at all?
I don't think that would really be of interest to people, just to start talking about our old coworkers. We can do that outside.
Any other questions from the room?
All right.
I think we're discouraging.
Yeah.
I think at this point we're discouraging questions. That's more than we're inviting them. But if there's nothing else, I mean, just thank you for coming to see it. It's so wild. It's really, yeah, thank you for those here for showing some others. Check them out if you're so inclined. But I'm really blown away to see people showing up for this movie over a decade after we made it. And yeah, if you want a button, just ask me. I've got 7 of them. Thank you both. Thank you guys.
Thanks. Wow.